And this one that I personally really liked, the big boys versus the independents. David versus Goliath, it was titled last year. Does anybody remember? No? Okay. So please give a warm, beautiful Singaporean welcome to my friend Tim Williamson from WATATAWA, moderator. Thank you.
The sound's on. Great. So thanks everybody for showing up for this one. It really is a subject close to, I think, all of our hearts here on stage. And we have some fantastic guests in the panel, some of the most exciting independent agencies, I think, in Asia at the moment. So I'm really excited. In terms of disciplines, it's interesting that we're on the Convergence stage because the disciplines that we cover are broad, but I think we've all got a lot of common ground. So we cover creative services, digital, we cover mobile, we cover PR. The topic, as we said, is independence against the big boys. Somewhat timely, as anybody who's been watching the news will know, the change at the top, one of the big holding companies, and a new independent agency on the scene. And we're, of course, talking about Sir Martin Sorrell, who is, of course, one of the most significant players in our industry. So exciting times. I think, generally speaking, if you look at the landscape and you look at the performance of some of the big holding companies, you can see some of the challenges and the changes that are affecting the industry today. So if you look at some stats, though, I think we can put that into context. If you look at WPP, last year billings of £55 billion. If you look at IPG, which is owner of agencies like Weber Shandwick, McCann Erickson, billings in the first revenues in the first quarter of 1.8 billion. The biggest PR agency is Edelman. Their revenues last year were just under $900 million US. So that if they're in bad shape, somewhat nice problems to have. I think Daniel Edelman said last year that they grew 2.1%, and he said we cannot accept that this is the new normal. So the big agencies are big, and certainly they sound as though they're pretty motivated. Everybody here, as I've said, is from independent agencies, and we'll do a very quick introduction to everybody. Actually, the first person that will talk, I'll ask to give a bit of information about themselves is Nicholas Yee. Just to set the scene a bit, Nicholas is the founder, the executive creative director of the Secret Little Agency, so clearly an independent. That is a creative company at the crossroads of culture, creativity, and commerce. Agency of the Year multiple times, and now a global creative force with part of the Mother family as of, I think, December. So offices in London, New York, and LA. Now, Nicholas, of all of the people here, and we can talk to our various backgrounds, Nicholas, you probably worked in large agency for perhaps the smallest amount of time of all of us. So you started your business, TSLA, after just a year in the workplace. What was the foundation story, and what made you go independent so quickly?
I think... Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No? Kind of? Okay. I think you just see something wrong, and you know, I think you feel like something's a bit off in the ecosystem, and you feel like there's a better way of doing things. So I think that's always the basis for any kind of transformation, where you want to get in there and you want to maybe do all the things that you feel you can do better, which is, I think the basis for any kind of entrepreneurship. So I think that was the starting point. I mean, I was 21 when I started that. If you think back to being 21, not a lot really goes on in your head. So you just really think about what's a better way of doing it, and specifically what's a better way of doing creativity. And I think ultimately it's been 11 years. We've tried to keep as close as possible to being a creative agency, not a digital agency, not a design agency, just being a creative agency. I think independence or being a network is not an issue. It's not a thing. It just is, the lot you're given in life. And, I think we started as independent. We're still independent. I hope, if it allows us to continue to do really good creative work, that we remain independent. And if it doesn't, then we keep an open mind about it. But yeah, the very basis for any kind of start is, can you do something better? Is there a better way of doing things? And I think that's how we started it.
So Aaron Koh, who is the Executive Creative Director of GOVT here in Singapore. Now, you were in big agency, DDB, BBH in Shanghai, and here in Singapore. You were in big agency for somewhat longer, and you've set up a business here in 2012. So what was your motivating factor for doing that? What was it that made you do it at that point?
I think it was a funny story when I was in Shanghai, working in BBH, and at that point of time it just started to be a network agency, and with other network agencies, it's kind of the same thing that Nick mentioned. But we also, there's a lot of talk when you're in a network agency. There's a lot of bitching that goes around. You talk about stuff that you don't necessarily believe in, but you still have to do it in some way or form just to hit the numbers. And that's something that, we've been talking a lot so much, and, talk is cheap, right? You just, but if you want to do something about it, then do it. So for me and my partner, we kind of figured out, we're going to try it for 2 years, and if it doesn't work out, then yeah, okay, maybe we go back to the network agencies, but we gave it a shot, and, this kind of, it's been a tough ride, but it's been fun. I don't regret it a single day, and we're still, doing what we love at the end of the day. And yeah, as a creative agency, it's pretty similar to what Nick said. We just try to better ourselves individually. We don't have anyone to kind of answer to. The decisions are all on us, whether we make or break it. And yeah, so it's been a fun ride.
So Alan Ma, you are the head of innovation studios at Rudafin, which is a large independent agency, big business in the US and in China. And within that, you run a business focused on digital, but you're previously from Weber, as am I, Edelman. And of all the people here, you've actually been on client side. So I don't know whether you've worked with the large agencies and the small agencies client side as well. Is being part of a big independent agency, in your experience, is that different to being part of a holding company, for example, being a part of a WPP or an IPG or any of the others?
Right. I'm from Rudolphine, as you said. It's a big independent agency. Well, I don't think whether we could define ourselves as one of the big boys, maybe not. But whenever we present to our clients, I would say that we are from Rudolphine. We are an agency established 70 years ago. Well, compared with the large agency teams, you're going to see the biggest differentiation point I see here is that since we are a family business, we haven't been a family business. That means the only stakeholders, the most important stakeholders we are going to take care of are just two groups of people. One is our clients, that's you, and the other group of people I need to really take care of is my staff. So we do not have any stockholders. That means comparatively our pressure is not that high. That means we are kind of at a more flexible position to serve our client in a better way we would like to have. Because sometimes if being a part of the big network, there are a lot of stuff you have to do, just for have to do sake. But as independent agency, we really focus on what will be the right thing to do. That is to focus on client service. And I think that's one of the one of the biggest advantages I have been observing over the years.
So finally, with Chris Steedman, so Managing Director Asia Pacific at M&C Saatchi Mobile. So you actually started in startup and became part of a leading independent agency, a big independent agency, and we were talking there about the pressures of a listed company. M&C Saatchi is, of course, a listed company. So the first question for you, I guess, is: Are you a big boy or independent?
Yes, good question. Are we David or Goliath? I think we have the best of both worlds in that respect. So we are a listed company. The way we frame ourselves is that we're a network of entrepreneurs. In terms of everyone who runs a division has a stake in the business, has equity in the business, and we're not tied down to work with other parts of our agency network to any kind of frame of horizontality or anything like that. So we can work quickly and we can be nimble, work to our clients' needs and their requirements as that of an independent, but obviously we have responsibilities for our shareholders and all that part of it as well. But we think we've got the best of both worlds because the world is getting smaller, and for us to work with global clients or even regional clients, having a global network is essential in order to succeed. So we've got the independent startup mentality along with the global agency network network to work with, which is essential for us.
So we've touched on some really interesting points already. So some of those are doing the work that you really wanted to do and probably got into the industry for in the first place. Nicholas, you raised just a different way of doing things, looking at the way things are done and thinking, well, I don't know why it's done like that, I'm just going to do it my way. We've talked a bit about ownership as well. And in your case, you were talking about how people are incentivized in M&C Saatchi. And then we've also talked about client service and putting the client first and not having to focus on the regular numbers. So we've talked on some interesting points. But when you look at the big holding companies, they're big holding companies for a reason. I mean, they've been incredibly successful over a long period of time. Do you think, Alan, I'll ask you this first, as somebody who's worked inside one of those companies, do you think that where they've got to in terms of slowing revenue is a tipping point, or is it just one of those cyclical type behaviors, something that just happens now and again, but they have the money to ride it out?
Well, I think that's just a natural thing to happen. I think the development of the agencies are just like the growth of a human being. Sometimes when we are a teenager, we are more active, energetic, flexible. But when we grow more and more mature, maybe there's a time, because of the scale, because of so many processes we need to follow in order to maintain the quality, we have to slow down. So that is something naturally to happen, and we could avoid. But personally, I always believe in what Jack Welch once said in one of his books, that the ideal situation for any business might be we could be big, we could enjoy the resources big organizations could have, but at the same time, we want to be as nimble and flexible as those small organizations. That will be ideal.
And we talk about nimble, flexible again, and client-focused again. Aaron, when you pitch for business, do you pitch for business, or do you have business coming to you? How does that work, and how do you find yourself stacking up against the large competitors?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, right? You do need to go out and look for the business, and I mean, as track record kind of plays out, right? If you've done something well, and naturally sometimes it doesn't come to you as a pitch. Sometimes it's just we've seen the great work that you've done, and maybe we feel that pitching is a waste of time. Most of the time it is, and you just get the work going, and there's a certain level of trust there, and there's a certain level of being able to adapt quickly. As an independent, it's a lot faster. You don't have so many kind of layers. Like, you are there, you make the decisions yourself, and you just move. So, but I mean, we've been quite fortunate to have kind of both pitching and the clients coming to us for a certain type of work that we've done before. So yeah, it's a bit of both.
And you work with large multinational. You both work with large multinational clients. Do you find that the MNCs now are perhaps looking for creative ideas from smaller agencies? Are they more receptive? Is there something structural that's changed within the MNCs that means they're not bulk buying, across territories, for example?
You want to try?
I'll give it a go. I think it comes down to, the world is changing very quickly. Yesterday, Grab was celebrating their 6-year anniversary and trying to get 100 million unique entrepreneurs in their platform, which is just insane what they've done in the last 6 years. You look at Netflix, are now bigger than Disney in the last decade. You have to be quick, you have to be nimble and fast, and that's why I think it leans very well to the independent. And we wouldn't be the agency who would be sitting and working. These businesses don't just work with one agency now; they work with multiple, because they need to work with the best in each individual field in order to succeed and move quickly and to continue to grow. So it really does depend on I think how aware each brand is of that challenge, because we have some brands who we won't get involved with because they still want to work with the old model of one agency to do absolutely everything, but then you're working with a generalist who's probably great at some things but not great at others, but it simplifies it for the brand. We've got others, we're lucky enough to say we do work with Grab, and that is a challenge because they are moving at such a pace that we have to be fast paced and continue to add value to them, because we'll get left behind if they're going to so many new categories, so many new things like that. So I think it comes down to how they're aware they do need to change. Every brand needs to change because it's happening across every industry.
And Nicholas, I just on that point, when you're competing, if you are competing against these large agencies with their global footprints and their multiple different business units and their cross-selling of all of the different brands, what is it that makes you stand out? How do you make sure that you're going to maximize your chances of winning the business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in the past, and I'm speaking like maybe 5 years ago, if we're talking about kind of a conventional advertising integrated marketing pitch on a global level or a regional level, a lot of the concerns are very practical, and I say that quite sadly almost, because I think you're looking at things like, do you have people in Vietnam and do you have people in Cambodia, and you're not even concerned if these are good people. You just want to make sure that there are people there and they share a similar logo on your name card. So these are like super kind of practical concerns like 5 years ago. I think now we've evolved to a level where clients are open to consortiums, clients are open to collectives of people. It's very much a talent-based type of. We've gone into pitches quite successfully where we would tell clients that we're not looking to create a network of convenience. We're looking to create a network of people that actually get your brand and understand, what they're doing and actually want to be here. And it sounds very basic again, but a lot of times you're working with counterparts in Paris and in London who may not necessarily want to be dragged on your, head and shoulders pitch, but they're forced to do it because, you're a paid employee. But I think when we try to do things, we try to find that meaning. I mean, at TSLA and Mother, we say we're 500 friends globally, and I think the importance of friendship, the importance of just basic human, I get along with you, I can hang with you over lunch or dinner, I can go out for a beer with you. That means a lot for a client, because you're not going to be bitching about, who does ad number 1 or who does, banner submission number 6, but you actually get along. So I feel like pitching's changed whereby clients are actually sussing out that there is real chemistry, that there are really good people that you've handpicked for the business. I think it was the CEO of P&G that recently said he wants to cut out all layers between himself and the creative folks, and he wants to just get straight into a handpicked group of people that he knows and trusts, irregardless of agencies or networks. And I think we're seeing more and more of that happening.
So just to add to one more thing as well, I think zero-based budgeting has come in as well, which is a big thing across happening to all the MNCs, and they are questioning every single line item on their P&L now. They want to show that everything is showing ROI. And that's changing it as well. Every single one of us have to show return on investment and add value to our clients because of zero-based budgeting. And I feel like, talk about the thing that you said at the start about the impact on WPP. The feeling is, with what Martin Sorow is talking about, it's just as much about zero-based budgeting as it is about how technologies come into the space, which is impacting these things. And I think that's why it leans very well to independents like ourselves.
There's a really good question that's come up here, which is, in the next 5 years, do you foresee further consolidation of independents by the big networks, or is it the other way around? I guess I'd like to expand on that a little bit, because what the big networks have is a huge headcount. They have, they consolidate office space, they consolidate the the back office functions, they cross-sell, etc. Do you foresee a situation where actually we'll all be in virtual teams? So you'll have people who are working remotely, you'll have very flexible, agile, and to your point, responsive and possibly somewhat low-cost teams comparative to those big, expensive kind of costs. Aaron, I'm just curious as to your thought on whether you think the model of the future the holding company model will still be around in a few years' time and still be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that right now, I mean, we are in an interesting space where, you know, it's kind of, there's still a lot of traditional models that is going on in network agencies and also in some independent agencies. And, you know, there is a bit of a shift in terms of the mindset of what client wants. They don't necessarily want a typical 360 campaign. They don't necessarily want, you know, just to tick the boxes within what the brief is. You know, there's always something else that, you know, that they're looking for, that something extra. So I do feel that it is shifting right now. We are in that space that if you kind of, you know, we ourselves, if we don't adapt to that change, like, we're going to just fall back very, very quickly. Especially in the digital age right now, where everything's kind of, you know, we were just talking about this and how China has shifted from a used to be traditional ATL kind of industry, and now everything is digital, everything is mobile. You know, so I mean, it is kind of a tough question in terms of expectations of what clients are going to, you know, how they're going to change that, their models. But I do feel that maybe we have to change the models ourselves first, you know, from our side, and then, you know, show that as an example. You know, maybe this is another way of working, this is another style. Not necessarily it's always in a form of a brief and we come back to you with 2 or 3 different options of an idea. Maybe it's something, you know, where the agency comes before the brief. You start talking about what the real problem is, you know, and then work from there. Because a lot of times, you know, you're shooting blanks, and that's kind of not a really good use of time. So maybe. I
think that's a really interesting point. And if we just, because we are in the Convergence room, and Convergence is an undercutting theme throughout the day, I guess one of the key points here is technology and marketing and how it affects marketing. Do you think the shifts in technology, the change in consumption patterns favors independence, or does it favor larger companies that can actually invest in the analytics and actually get up to speed with more quickly what's going on?
Personally, I think definitely, for example, as I am from Rudolphin, while I'm heading the digital arm of Rudolphin, technology really enables us, because we can see that in the past years, there are a lot of changes in the landscape. I used to be in traditional PR field, also with the traditional in-house marketing roles. But nowadays we see that with technology, for example, everybody knows about WeChat in China. So my team, who is quite a young and new team, which was just established around 2 years ago in China. We now have clients like some Fortune 500 companies, and also Tencent is also one of our clients. So how did we get those clients? That's because we are not lagging behind. We do not need to have a long history or heritage. Of course, we benefit from our Rudolphin networks in terms of those clients' needs. But for the new and the big clients, they come to us simply because we could embrace the new trend, and we could leverage the technology to create the integrated marketing solutions for them. Although we do not have a long history like those big boys, so I do see the current technology development do show some benefits to the independent and small teams like us.
So it's an interesting point. Things are changing so quickly. Aaron, you started a business in 2012. Is it better or worse now than it was in 2012 in terms of setting up an independent business in Asia and in Singapore?
I think it's the easiest thing to start up an agency. It's the hardest thing to maintain it and to do it well. I think there are different challenges back then and right now, and let's see. Well, it is, it's a lot more calculated risk right now. Previously when we first started out, right, everything was just kind of, trying to be all gung-ho and, thinking, this is the right way and let's just go for it. Not knowing what were the consequences. Coming up with creative ideas that might not suit the clients, and the clients might not buy those ideas, but you just sell it to them anyway. Back then there was a lot of guts, it was a guts and glory kind of thing at the beginning. But then when you have a lot more headcount in your company, right, you can't play around with that. That's their rice bowl, So that's where the calculated risk comes in. Sometimes we might not be the most risk. We don't take that much risk, but we try to in terms of the creative output of the work. But I think that the tough part about it is that we got to grow up, we got to mature. You can't just be who we are and who we want to be anymore. We got to think about the rest of the people in the company. So I think it's tougher now, compared to what we could be back then, kind of free-spirited and doing what we want. So yeah, that's the responsibility, I guess.
So that's a point about the maturity of the business, and as you say, once you start being responsible for other people, and not just for yourself. Nicholas, you've talked about being an independent with kind of global aspirations and a view, and you've got an office now in Shanghai. So how do you keep the independent spirit when you start getting towards sort of 50, 60, 70 people?
I mean, when you start something with a commercial reason in mind, and I mean, let's not fool ourselves, right? I think when we started TSLA when I was 21, there's a lot less commerce in your mind because you don't have many bills to pay as a 21-year-old. But I think, as life powers on, you start to really revolve, at least our North Star is really what is good work and how do we create good work and what helps us to get at creating good work. And we started in China, which is infamously a very client-centric market, meaning it's a market where agencies typically say yes to clients. And I mean, I think we started there 2 years ago with the same kind of gung-ho attitude, which is, let's do what's right for the work. Let's do, good creative work. Let's be a lot less accountable or answerable to, say, a current human connection. And I think that's kind of the attitude of the agency that we created there. And I mean, it is very much a buyer's market, aka there are a lot more agencies out there, and I think that's what we stand for. And it may rub some people off the wrong way. And as in China especially, I think there are a ton of agencies you could go to if we piss you off. But I think it's that same attitude that we hope at least helps us to arrive at a different type of work. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different. And I think it's what got us here in Singapore, where we're quite unapologetic about how we get to good work. And it doesn't rub everyone the right way. It's not pleasing all the time, but at least we hold our heads high at something we've done, and we're not hiding it under the rug at the end of the day.
You've obviously, Chris, built a business that's now part of M&C Saatchi. But it's very much, you've been building a business strand within that business. When you look at the mobile business, how helpful is it for you having that broader group structure there, the broader footprint, or is it largely irrelevant to what you've been doing?
Yes, good question. I think there are some, I think if you look back to what I was saying earlier, we can choose to work with other departments if it works, if it fits for the business, both our business units and also the client requirements, so we're not shoehorned into doing those type of things. I think so everyone sticks to their speciality. I think it's great, obviously the brand name, one of the biggest names in advertising, Saatchi is, so that helps, particularly when you're going into a new market. So opening up offices in Singapore for the mobile division and in India over the last 4 years, that is a massive help for us in that respect. But ultimately, we can go off and do our own thing, which is great. So it does help. I think the other thing is the multinational approach as well. We work with some huge brands globally, and they do want to work with people on the ground in certain markets. Obviously, to the point earlier, they need to be good people, and we try to ensure that as best we can. But I think it's more of a help than a hindrance, I think, because we feel we've got the best of both worlds.
So we have a question on the board about talent. Of course, attracting talent to independence, it can work both ways, I guess. But do you find in your respective businesses, and perhaps we can start with you, Alan, and work around, do you find attracting talent is any different from any of the big holding companies?
Yeah, that might be the biggest challenges. That might be the biggest challenge we are facing as an independent network, especially when, as one of the digital teams of the whole agency, if we are not having a large scale, especially for those junior people who are supposed to be the new blood for our industry, because this is their generation. They are born to embrace the new technology. They are this generation, and they are both where our talents are supposed to be from, as well as the target audience we're going to focus a lot. However, as a not so big network agency, well, for those generations, they have so many opportunities they could choose from. That is why when they see that, as a starting point for my career, I would like to get the systematic training thing, then I would like to prefer to have opportunity in the big boys network instead of independent agents. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge we're having.
And it comes to, there's a fantastic question here about the pros and cons of working in an agency. And this actually goes back to talent. But if you knew what you know now, Aaron, about setting up an agency, would you have done it?
I wouldn't know that you had to spend that much money, especially to attract, top talent. But yeah, no, I still would do it. You don't take for granted what you start to not take for granted the things that you used to do it in the network agency. So I think that's the biggest difference. But I think on the point of the finding talent, right, the top talent in the industry it is especially hard, not because they are expensive, but it's also a brand name, and that is the first thing that comes to mind, because it's like whether it's a GOVT Singapore or TSLA or what versus a BBH, or Ogilvy and BBDO and so on and so forth. It's like those are big brand names, and that's something if you're a young creative, or a young accounts person, you want a name in your portfolio, and that's the first thing that you think about. That was the first thing I thought about, when I moved to BBH. So that is especially hard as well, trying to kind of convert that mindset from big brand agencies to kind of smaller ones like ours.
I know when I've hired talent from the big agencies, what you often find is they're fantastic training grounds. Oftentimes the young talent has been, worked hard, taught really well, and they're up for a new challenge. Do you find that you're hiring people from the big agencies, or is it people who are naturally gravitating towards independent brands?
I mean, when I was in DDB Singapore, right, it was a great training ground for me. Like you said, it was great. You get to kind of time manage. You get to work on like multiple accounts at one go, and it was really, really tough. But it was, it kind of built who you are. It built you to who you are today. Yeah. So I mean, I think that there are differences in terms of kind of the way that you are treated in a network agency or an independent agency, in terms of the workflow and stuff like that. For independent agency, I think I dare say that it's a lot more fluid. It's not so structured in a way. You also get to do a lot more things. Like in a network agency, your role is your role. If you're an art director, you're an art director. Do what's right for an art director. But for us, the art director needs to know a lot of things. you know, they need to be, you know, the jack of all trades, the master of none. You know, you don't have to be the best, you know, master craftsman in terms of illustration, but you do need to know a little bit of illustration, a little bit of film, a little bit of photography, and so on and so forth, and that makes you a really great creative for a smaller agency like ours.
So it seems, I mean, in by and large, the independent scene is extremely healthy and seems to be growing and burgeoning in lots of different areas. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I really appreciate talking to you and finding out all about your businesses. Thank you.
Thanks.